So if you really look at the history of, say, the 20th century, you can probably point to, what, maybe three, four people who literally invented a
A
sound.
sound. Yeah, not just a new song.
Right, not a new genre even, but a sonic texture, something that just fundamentally changed how we all hear music.
It's a tragically short list.
hmm
And, well, right at the top of it, for better or worse, is Phil Spector.
But the problem with Spector, and this is really why we're doing this deep dive today, is that you can't separate the sonic architecture from the psychological architecture.
Hmm.
The man who built the Wall of Sound, this incredible Wagnerian, beautiful pop explosion,
Mhm.
is the exact same man who died in a prison hospital, a convicted murderer, unable to even speak.
It's the ultimate paradox, isn't it?
Hmm.
We always try to do that thing, separate the art from the artist.
That's right.
You listen to the music, you ignore the guy behind the curtain. But with Spector,
Yeah.
I really don't think you can. The source material we're looking at today, I mean, the biographies, the core transcripts, the session logs, they all point to one single unifying thread.
Control.
Control. The absolute iron-fisted control he exerted over every single note of music was the exact same pathology that destroyed his life and the lives of people around him.
And that's our mission today. We're not just going to recount a biography, A to B to C. We're trying to really understand the mechanism of that control. How does a poor, bullied kid from the Bronx become the tycoon of teen in just a few years?
And then the flip side, how does that same obsessive genius curdle into something so dark and violent?
And we should give a fair warning to everyone listening. We are absolutely going to geek out on the technical side of things, the 1960s production genius, the microphones, the arrangements, the echo chambers.
Oh, for sure.
But to tell the whole story, the second half of this dive has to go to some incredibly dark places. We're talking about abuse, isolation, and ultimately murder.
It's heavy stuff, but
Yeah.
it's necessary. You can't understand the ending of this story if you don't really, really look at the very beginning.
And for Phil Spector, the beginning is defined by a single shattering event.
It really all starts with the family dynamic. He's born Harvey Philip Spector in 1939 in the Bronx.
Right.
Russian-Jewish immigrant family. And right away, there's this feeling of otherness. The family name wasn't even originally Spector. It was something like Spectus or Spectors. And it got anglicized at Ellis Island, the classic story.
But there was a deeper secret in the house, something that Spector himself believed his whole life.
The cousin theory.
Yeah.
He grew up believing, and the sources we have suggest this was a widely held, if whispered, family belief, that his parents were actually first cousins.
So imagine being a kid and hearing that right from the jump, you feel genetically compromised, like an outsider in your own bloodline.
Exactly. And he was a small kid, asthmatic. He got bullied relentlessly. He just had this cloud over him. But the event that broke everything, the trauma that you can argue runs through every single record he ever produced, that happened in 1949.
His father, Benjamin Spector.
Yeah. His dad was a deeply troubled man. He was an iron worker, but he was just drowning in debt. And one morning, April 20th, he goes out to his car, which is parked in the family's attached garage. He starts the engine.
And doesn't open the garage doors.
Suicide by carbon monoxide poisoning. Phil was 9 years old.
9! Think about the scale of that abandonment for a 9-year-old boy. The father figure in your life just vanishes. And the family, his mother Bertha and his older sister Shirley, they don't handle it with, therapy and open discussion.
Oh, no, this was the 1940s.
They handle it with silence.
Yeah.
And then relocation.
They pack up everything and move across the country to Los Angeles in 1953. Bertha gets a job as a seamstress. And Phil, he basically becomes a ghost. He enrolls in Fairfax High School, but he's invisible.
He's the classic kid in the corner with the asthma inhaler, terrified of the world, carrying this massive unspoken grief.
Until he picks up a guitar. And this is, it's almost a cliche, right? The instrument as a shield, the thing that lets the quiet kid finally speak.
But for Spector, it wasn't just about playing chords. It was about expression. It was a way to process things. And he starts to find his tribe. He falls in with this crew of other outcasts and aspiring musicians, guys who would become big names later, like Lou Adler and Bruce Johnston.
And this little community, this kind of musical gang, it leads to the formation of the Teddy Bears. And here's where I want to just pause, because the story of their first hit single is almost too perfect. It's so literary it feels like it should be fiction, but it's absolutely true.
It's an incredible act of psychological sublimation. It's 1958. Spector's 18 years old. He's trying to write a song for his little high school group.
And he can't get his father out of his head. Specifically, he's thinking about a trip they took back to the cemetery in New York after his father died. He's picturing the tombstone.
And he remembers the epitaph carved into the stone?
The epitaph on Benjamin Spector's grave read, "To know him was to love him."
Which is, I mean, what a phrase. And he takes that phrase, which, let's be honest, was probably a lie because his father was a troubled, difficult man who ultimately abandoned them. And he performs this amazing psychological trick.
He twists it. He changes the tense.
To know him is to love him.
He takes his profound, complicated grief for a dead father, and he repackages it. He turns it into a sweet, innocent, teenage love ballad about a high school boyfriend.
That is a staggering pivot for an 18-year-old. He didn't just process his trauma, he monetized it. He turned it into a product.
And they record it for a tiny label, Era Records. And it doesn't just do okay. It slowly climbs the charts and goes all the way to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It sells over 1 million copies.
Can you imagine the dopamine hit from that? You are a bullied, asthmatic, fatherless kid, and suddenly the entire country is singing your private pain. But they think they're singing about a high school crush. That has to fundamentally rewire your brain.
It validated him completely. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. The Teddy Bears were not a very good band.
Not at all.
They were a vehicle for that one perfect song. They went on tour, and Spector hated it. He absolutely despised the lack of control in a live performance. The acoustics were bad, the audience was unpredictable, the band made mistakes.
He wasn't in charge of the sound.
Right, and he realized very, very quickly, I don't want to be the puppet on the stage. I want to be the puppet master in the booth.
He wants to be in the control room.
Exactly. So the band breaks up by 1959. The follow-up singles flop. Spector dusts himself off and decides he needs a real education, not college. He goes to the real University of Pop Music at the time.
The Brill Building.
He moves to New York and basically forces his way into the orbit of Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller.
The absolute gods of that era. These guys wrote Hound Dog, Jailhouse Rock, Stand By Me. They were the architects of rock and roll songwriting.
And Spector becomes their apprentice. And this is such a crucial period that often gets overlooked. He wasn't just fetching coffee and watching from the sidelines. He was a session musician. He was in the room playing on these records.
That's Phil Spector playing the guitar solo on the Drifters on Broadway.
It is. And he co-wrote Spanish Harlem with Jerry Leiber for Benny King.
Wait, he co-wrote Spanish Harlem? That's a classic.
It's a standard. And while he's doing all this, he's watching Leiber and Stoller work. He's absorbing everything. He's seeing how they manage the musicians, how they structure a 3-minute drama, how they build a song. But he's also seeing what they aren't doing.
He thinks they're still too traditional.
He thinks they're still just recording a band in a room. And he's hearing something bigger in his head, something thicker, more orchestral.
So he takes this incredible crash course in pop production, goes back to LA, and in 1961, he makes a move that is just unprecedented for a guy his age.
He co-founds his own record label, Phil's Records. Phil plus his other mentor, Lester Sill.
He is 21 years old.
21. He is the youngest record label owner in the United States. And now, for the first time, he has total, absolute autonomy.
And this is where his business strategy completely breaks from the norm. At the time, the industry model was basically throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks.
Right. You sign 20 acts, you release 50 singles, and you just pray that 3 of them become hits. It was a volume game.
Spector looked at that model and said, that's stupid. That's inefficient. He went for extreme scarcity. He wanted to release very few records, but he wanted every single one of them to be a smash hit.
He treated pop music not as a disposable commodity, but as a major artistic event. Each single was like a movie premiere.
And to make sure they were hits, he had to control the product from conception to consumption.
Right.
Which brings us to the invention he's most famous for, the wall of sound.
Well, wall of sound.
Now, I really want to break this down technically because people use that term so loosely today to just mean, loud music. But in 1962, this was a very specific, almost scientific acoustic formula.
His pitch was, little symphonies for the kids. That was the phrase he used. He wanted the grandeur and the emotional weight of a Wagner opera, but he wanted it compressed into a 3-minute, 45 RPM single.
And it all started with the personnel. He didn't use small, tight rock and roll bands. He assembled a collective of LA's best session players.
The Wrecking Crew.
The legendary Wrecking Crew, Hal Blaine on drums, the incredible Carol Kay on bass, Larry Knechtel on keys, Glenn Campbell on guitar.
These were mostly jazz players.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, these guys could play anything you put in front of them. But Spector didn't want them to play like individual jazz musicians showing off their chops. He wanted them to play as a single massive organism.
So in a normal session back then, you'd have one guitar, one bass, one piano, a drum kit. Spector would book 3 piano players.
4 or 5 guitarists. 2, sometimes 3 bassists.
And here's the crucial part. They weren't playing complex harmonies or countermelodies against each other.
No, they were all playing the exact same notes at the exact same time.
So from a physics standpoint, what does that do to the sound? Because if you have 3 pianos all playing a C chord, it doesn't just sound like one really loud piano, right?
It completely changes the timbre, the character of the sound. Because no 2 human beings can hit a piano key or pluck a guitar string at the exact same microsecond. So you get these tiny, almost imperceptible delays, milliseconds of difference between each player.
It blurs the attack of the note.
It blurs the attack, and it creates this incredible, thick wash of tone. It stops sounding like a piano and a guitar, and it starts sounding like this new hybrid instrument that you've never heard before.
It creates a texture where you can't easily pick out the individual instruments anymore.
Precisely. It becomes a wall of sound.
Mm-hmm.
And then you factor in the room. He worked almost exclusively at Gold Star Studios in Los Angeles, specifically Studio A.
And it was a small room, famously small.
Tiny. And he would cram 20, 30 musicians into this little room. Violins next to the drums, horns next to the guitars. There was no isolation.
So you're getting incredible microphone bleed. The drum mic is picking up the guitars. The vocal mic is picking up the percussion.
Which is the exact opposite of how modern recording works.
Yeah.
Today, it's all about isolation, separation, getting a clean signal for each instrument. Spector wanted the opposite. He wanted the bleed. He wanted the air in the room to be completely saturated with sound before it even hit a microphone.
And then the secret sauce.
The echo chambers.
And again, we're not talking about digital reverb plugins that you just click on a computer. These were physical rooms.
Oh, yeah. Gold Star had these legendary trapezoidal concrete basements. Spector would take the audio from the live studio performance, pump it down into these concrete rooms through massive speakers, record the sound of it bouncing off the concrete walls.
Which would create this huge, muddy, beautiful decay.
And then he would fold that wet, messy, gorgeous echo back on top of the original mix. So you have the blurred instruments, the microphone bleed, and this thick layer of natural concrete reverb slathered over everything. It's impossibly dense.
And on top of all that, he insisted on recording and mixing in mono.
Which is such a key point, because by the early 60s, the world was moving to stereo. That was the new, exciting technology. Why did he fight so hard for mono?
Control. 100% control. If you're listening to a record in stereo, you, the listener, have a little bit of agency. You can sit closer to the left speaker or the right speaker. You can perceive the separation of the instruments.
In mono, there's nowhere to go. The producer decides the exact balance of every single element. The sound comes out of the speaker as a single, unified, indivisible block. You hear exactly what Phil Spector wants you to hear in the exact way he wants you to hear it. There is no other option.
It's basically authoritarian audio engineering.
That is the perfect way to put it. And my God, did it work. The output from Phil's records from 1962 to 1965 is just an unbelievable run of hits. You start with the Crystals.
And right away, with their first big hit, He's a Rebel, you see the control in action. Because the source material confirms that wasn't actually the Crystals singing on the record.
Not at all. Spector was in a rush. He heard another producer was about to release a version of the song, and he had to beat them to the charts. He was in L.A., but the Crystals, the actual group, were on the road in New York.
So what does he do?
He doesn't care. He just grabs a local L.A. group, Barlene Love and the Blossoms, has them sing the track, and he slaps the Crystals on the label and releases it.
The name of the artist didn't matter. The brand was a Phil Spector production. The singers were just another instrument, totally interchangeable parts in his machine.
That's exactly how he viewed them. And then you get this string of classics, Do, Ron Ron, then he Kiss Me. And then he finds what he considers the crown jewel of his sonic empire, the Ronettes.
And specifically, their lead singer, Veronica Bennett, Ronnie.
Her voice just obsessed him. It had this perfect blend of girlish innocence and raw, streetwise power. He hears her, and he thinks, this is it. This is the instrument I've been waiting for. And he builds his masterpiece around her. Be My Baby.
That opening drum beat, boom, 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 clap.
It's the heartbeat of the 1960s. Hal Blaine's drumming.
And Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys famously called Be My Baby the greatest pop record ever made. He said he listened to it 1,000 times, trying to figure out how Spector did it.
It's the absolute perfection of the wall of sound formula. He went to #2 on the charts. And this run of hits solidified Spector as not just a guy who made records, but as a cultural force. He was changing the very sound of popular music.
And he reaches the absolute commercial peak with the Righteous Brothers.
You've lost that love and feeling.
Phil's Record's second #1 single. But look at the legacy of that song. Up until 2019, it was the single most played song on American radio and television in history.
That's staggering. And at the time, it was almost 4 minutes long, which was considered commercial suicide for a pop single.
So what did Spector do?
He lied. He printed the running time on the record's label as 3.05 so that radio DJs wouldn't be scared off and would actually play it.
It's just constant manipulation. He was manipulating the singers, the musicians, the DJs, the listeners, even time itself.
And we can't talk about this golden era without mentioning the Christmas album, a Christmas gift for you from Phil's Records. Because today, we listen to Darlene Love singing Christmas, Baby Please Come Home, and it feels absolutely timeless. It's a holiday staple.
But the release timing was one of the most tragic coincidences in music history.
It was released on November 27th, 1963.
The day John F. Kennedy was assassinated.
Talk about the air getting sucked out of the room. The entire nation was in mourning. Absolutely no one was in the mood to hear these bombastic, joyous, wall of sound Christmas carols.
The album completely tanked. It was a total commercial failure. It took decades for it to be reevaluated and recognized as the masterpiece it is. But for Spector, who believed he had the Midas touch, these little failures, these moments where he couldn't control the world, they started to chip away at his armor.
And you see his obsession with control in this other weird little detail from that era. The B-sides of his records.
I love this because it shows his complete disdain for the rules of the industry.
He was basically trolling the DJs. He was terrified that a disc jockey might accidentally flip the record over and play the B-side, and maybe that would become the hit by mistake, and he would lose control of the narrative.
So he made the B-sides unlistenable on purpose.
He recorded intentional garbage, just throwaway instrumental tracks that went nowhere. He'd give them joke titles, too. There's one called Dr. Kaplan's Office.
Named after his psychiatrist.
Exactly. He made the B-sides unplayable to force everyone to focus only on his art, the A-side. It's just control, control, control at every level.
But you can only manipulate reality for so long before reality pushes back. And the big pushback came in 1966. The record was River Deep, Mountain High.
This is the pivot point. This is the moment the whole simulation breaks down for him. He signs Ike and Tina Turner. Or really signs Tina. He didn't care about Ike at all. He famously paid Ike something like $20,000 just to stay out of the studio during the sessions.
He just wanted Tina's voice. He wanted to build the ultimate monument to himself, to the wall of sound, using her incredible voice as the final perfect instrument.
And he sweats blood over this track. He works on it for weeks. He uses a massive orchestra. He considers it his magnum opus, the greatest thing he has ever created. He releases it, fully expecting the world to just bow down in awe.
And in the United States, it charts at number 88.
88. That's not a flop. That's a public rejection.
It shattered him. It did well in the UK. It went to number 3 there. But in America, the culture had moved on. The Beatles were getting experimental. Bob Dylan had gone electric. The Motown sound was slick and sophisticated. Spector's melodramatic teenage symphonies were starting to sound, well, a little dated.
And because his entire ego, his entire identity was constructed around this idea of being the infallible genius who controlled the charts, this failure didn't just make him sad or disappointed, it made him retreat. He basically takes his ball and goes home.
He shuts down Phil's Records. He becomes a recluse. He withdraws into his mansion and starts getting weirder.
We see him pop up in a cameo in the 1969 movie Easy Rider playing a drug dealer, which feels a little on the nose in retrospect. But really, for a few years, he's in a self-imposed exile.
Until the biggest band in the world realizes they have a problem so big that only Phil Spector can solve it.
The Beatles. 1970.
This is the infamous Let It Be disaster.
It was an absolute mess. The original Get Back sessions were just hours and hours of tape of the band arguing, playing half-finished songs with terrible vibes. The band had essentially given up and abandoned the whole project.
So Alan Klein, their manager at the time, brings Spector over to England, dumps these tapes in his lap, and basically says, can you make an album out of this junk?
And this is one of the most polarizing moments in rock history, because for half the world, Phil Spector saved the final Beatles album. For the other half, he desecrated it.
Specifically, he desecrated it for Paul McCartney.
Oh, Paul was infuriated. You listen to a song like The Long and Winding Road. Paul wrote a simple, beautiful, sparse piano ballad. Spector gets his hands on it, and what does he do?
He Spectorizes it.
He adds a massive string orchestra. He adds a heavenly choir. He adds harps. He slathers it in the wall of sound.
McCartney hated it. He felt it was pure schmaltz. But John Lennon...
Lennon loved it. Lennon publicly defended him. He famously said Spector took the shittiest load of badly recorded shit and made it into something listenable. And this act aligned Spector firmly with the Lennon and Harrison camp in the post-Beatles Civil War.
Which leads directly to his work on George Harrison's solo masterpiece, All Things Must Pass.
My sweet lord, that is pure, unadulterated wall of sound. It's lush, it's spiritual, it's absolutely massive, and he produces Lennon's solo stuff. Like, imagine. But while the music was still succeeding, Spector's personal behavior in the studio was deteriorating rapidly.
The alcohol consumption was just skyrocketing, and the gun started to come out.
This is the era of the gun. It stops being a quirky rumor and starts being a daily occupational hazard for anyone working with him.
There's the famous story from the sessions for John Lennon's rock and roll album in 1973. The sessions were already chaotic, fueled by drugs and alcohol. Spector shows up one day dressed as a surgeon, another day as a karate master. He's drinking brandy constantly.
And then he pulls out a handgun.
And he fires it
into the ceiling of the control room, right next to John Lennon's head. And Lennon, in his typical dry way, apparently yelled, "Phil, if you're going to kill me, but don't fuck with my ears. I need those."
It's a great line, but think about the reality of that situation. The producer is firing a live weapon in a soundproof room. This isn't just eccentricity anymore. This is a full-blown mental health crisis playing out in public.
And then, as if that's not enough, he steals the master tapes from the session. He literally holds them hostage until Capitol Records pays him a hefty ransom for their return.
It's a complete breakdown of all professional norms, but then in 1974, the breakdown becomes brutally physical, the car crash.
Yeah, in Hollywood. He has a terrible accident, he's not wearing his seatbelt, and he's thrown through the windshield of his car. The injuries are horrific, something like 300 stitches in his face, 400 in the back of his head.
And the source material really suggests that this is the moment the Phil Spector character takes over completely. The mask becomes the face.
The head injuries were extremely serious. And to cover the scars, he starts wearing these wigs, these massive, bizarre, outlandish wigs. But they become more than a covering. They become part of the armor. He's hiding behind the hair, hiding behind the dark glasses, hiding behind the walls of his mansion.
And the music starts to suffer for it. He tries to launch a new label, Warner Spector, but it goes nowhere. He produces an album for Leonard Cohen, Death of a Ladies' Man.
And he essentially holds Cohen hostage during the process. He locks him out of the mixing sessions.
Cohen couldn't even hear his own songs being mixed.
Nope. Spector reportedly had armed bodyguards at the studio door to keep him out. Cohen later called the result grotesque, but also semi-virtuous. He was completely baffled by it.
It's like he was trying to prove that he didn't need the artist at all anymore. The producer was the only one who mattered. Which leads to maybe the strangest pairing of all, the Ramones.
End of the century, 1979. Punk rock meets the wall of sound.
It's oil and water. The Ramones were all about speed, efficiency, 3 chords, no frills. Spector was the king of tedious, layered, obsessive perfectionism.
And again, the guns came out.
D. Ramone claimed in his book that Spector pulled a gun on him when he tried to leave the mansion one night, pointed it right at his chest and said, "You're not going anywhere."
He allegedly forced Johnny Ramone to play the opening chord of Rock and Roll High School over and over and over again for 8 straight hours until he got the exact sound he wanted.
It's that same control impulse again. He's treating the Ramones like he treated the Wrecking Crew. But these are New York punk rockers. They don't take orders like that.
The final album is. It's a fascinating listen. And strangely enough, it became the Ramones' highest charting record. But the cost was high. It solidified Spector's reputation as a talented, but dangerous man to work with. Sure. And after that, he basically disappears for almost 20 years.
But while the recording studios were quiet, the house was not. And this is where we have to pivot to the victims of his control. Because while he was waving guns at John Lennon and D.D. Ramone, He was doing much, much worse to the people he claimed to love.
I have to talk about Ronnie.
Ronnie Bennett, the voice of Be My Baby. They finally married in 1968. And her memoir, also called Be My Baby, it reads like a gothic horror novel.
It's absolutely terrifying. He moved her into his 23-room mansion in Beverly Hills and then systematically turned it into a prison. He had barbed wire fences installed. He had guard dogs patrolling the grounds. He confiscated her shoes so she couldn't run outside.
He completely isolated her from her family, from her friends. He forbid her from performing. And then there was the coffin.
The glass coffin. He bought a gold coffin with a glass top and kept it in the basement. And he told her explicitly, if you ever try to leave me, I will kill you and display your body in this coffin.
That's not a bad marriage. That is a hostage situation.
She eventually escaped in 1972. She had to do it with the help of her mother. She literally broke out of the house barefoot and ran for her life. In the divorce settlement, this part is just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
He threatened to hire a hitman to kill her unless she signed away all of her future record earnings.
So she gave up millions of dollars just to get away from him alive. She had to buy her own freedom.
And it wasn't just Ronnie. They adopted 3 children, Dante, Louis, and Gary. Years later, his adopted son Dante came forward with his own stories. He described being locked in his room for days at a time, being blindfolded, subjected to bizarre ritualistic abuse. He called Mansion a concentration camp.
It paints this horrifying picture of a man who needed absolute dominion over every living thing in his orbit. If he couldn't control the public's taste in music anymore, he would control his wife and his children with absolute unimaginable terror.
And he got away with it for decades. That's the thing that's so chilling. He was rich, he was famous, he was a genius. So people looked the other way. They just said, oh, that's just Phil being Phil.
He called himself borderline insane in a deposition years later. He admitted he had devils inside him, but he was still walking free, still living in his bizarre mansion, the Pyrenees Castle, up in Alhambra, a literal castle on a hill looking down on everyone else.
Until the night of February 3, 2003.
The night the music and his freedom stopped for good, and the night Lana Clarkson's life ended.
Lana Clarkson was a 40-year-old actress. She'd had some success in the 80s. She was the star of Roger Corman's cult film Barbarian Queen. But by 2003, her career had stalled, and she was working as a hostess at the House of Blues in West Hollywood.
Spector comes in that night. He's drinking. He meets her, and at the end of the night, he persuades her to come back to the castle for one last drink.
A truly fateful decision.
They get to the castle, and around 5 a.m., a single gunshot rings out.
The physical evidence is crucial here. Lana Clarkson was found dead, slumped in a chair in the foyer of the mansion. She had a single gunshot wound to the mouth.
And Spector is there, of course, but the smoking gun almost literally was the key witness. Spector's driver, Adriano de Souza, he was waiting outside in the limousine.
And what did he see and hear?
He testified that Spector came out the back door with a gun in his hand and said 5 words that would ultimately seal his fate.
I think I killed somebody.
I think I killed somebody. It is very, very hard to walk that statement back.
But Spector tried. Or rather, his incredibly high-priced legal team tried. They immediately began spinning a story that Lana Clarkson was depressed about her career, that she was unstable, and that she had grabbed the gun and shot herself. An accidental suicide.
Spector even gave an interview to Esquire magazine where he used the revolting phrase that she kissed the gun.
It's the ultimate act of control, isn't it? Trying to rewrite the narrative of a woman's violent death to protect your own ego.
The legal battle that followed was a total circus. The first trial in 2007 was televised. It was a spectacle. Spector would show up in court every day wearing a different, more outlandish wig, a huge afro one day, a Beatles-style mop top the next. It felt like sick performance art.
And it almost worked. That first trial resulted in a mistrial. The jury was hung 10-2 in favor of conviction, but they couldn't get a unanimous verdict.
He came that close to walking free.
He almost did. But the state decided to try him again in 2008. This time, there were no cameras in the courtroom. It was just about the facts. And the prosecution brought in a string of other women who testified that Phil Spector had a clear pattern of behavior, pulling guns on them when they tried to leave his home.
And that pattern was just too much for the second jury to ignore. The verdict.
Guilty. Second-degree murder, plus a charge for using a firearm in the commission of a crime. He was sentenced to 19 years to life in prison.
So the man who built the legendary Wall of Sound ends his life behind 4 walls of concrete.
He was sent to the California Health Care Facility, which is a prison for inmates with long-term medical needs. And the decline was rapid and shocking. You look at the mugshots from 2013, 2014. He's completely unrecognizable. The wigs are gone. He's bald, frail, and he just looks terrified.
And the final irony of his life is just, it's so heavy. The man who gave the world the loudest, most dense, most powerful voice in pop music lost his own voice.
Laryngeal papillomatosis. It's a disease that causes tumors to grow on the larynx. He lost the ability to speak in 2014. He spent the last 6 or 7 years of his life in complete silence.
And then the final blow, the pandemic.
In December of 2020, he contracted COVID-19. He died from complications of the disease on January 16, 2021. He was 81 years old.
Dying in a prison hospital alone, in silence? There's no grandeur to it. It's a pathetic, miserable end. Which brings us to the hard job, the job we promised to do at the start of this. We have to look at the legacy.
Because you can't tell the story of rock and roll without Phil Spector, but you also can't tell the story of Phil Spector without the murder of Lana Clarkson.
It is the ultimate dilemma. Musically, his impact it's just incalculable. He didn't just produce songs, he redefined what a producer was. Before him, producers were mostly documentarians. Their job was just to capture the sound of the band playing.
Spector made the producer the star, the artist, the auteur. The band was just paint. He was the painter.
Exactly. Without Phil Spector, you don't get Brian Wilson getting obsessed and making pet sounds. You probably don't get Bruce Springsteen making Born to Run with its own version of a wall of sound.
You don't get the whole shoegaze genre bands like My Bloody Valentine or the Jesus and Mary Chain, who took that idea of a dense wall of noise and ran with it. His influence is everywhere.
He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Songwriters Hall of Fame, a Grammy Trustees Award winner.
He is. But when he died, the reaction from the world was, understandably, very complicated. Ronnie Spector, his ex-wife, released a statement that I think really sums it up perfectly. She said he was a brilliant producer, but a lousy husband.
That might be the understatement of the century.
And his biographer, Mick Brown, who wrote this definitive book about him, said we have to acknowledge the musical genius and the scaly, night-crawling pod as one and the same. You can't separate them because they grew from the exact same soil.
And that's the thought I really want to leave our listeners with today. We spent a lot of time talking about the wall of sound. It was dense, it was impenetrable, it was totally controlling. Every single sonic frequency was filled so that no silence, no outside air could get in.
It was a fortress of sound.
All of fortress. Phil Spector treated the recording studio as an instrument to control every single detail of his environment. And you have to wonder, was that wall really just a musical triumph? Or was it a psychological fortress that he was building to keep the world and maybe his own demons out? And ultimately, did that same obsessive need for absolute control, that wall he built around himself, is that what turned into the very prison that he eventually died in?
A prison of sound that became a prison of concrete. It's a profound and horrifying tragedy of his own making.